After having last week off, we didn't get our weekly check-in with William Kelly out of Chicago, so we do that now here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk. I'm Greg Bishop, and William, thanks for taking time with us as always. But one thing I definitely want to get an update on before we jump into what's happening on the streets is what's the latest with your press credentials in that federal case you brought against former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, now Mayor Brandon Johnson at the helm. What's going on? When are you going to get your press credentials back? Good morning.
God bless you, Greg. Only a fellow journalist would. We've got shootings at Sox Park. We've got migrant on migrant violence. We've got 30 plus armed robberies of people just walking down the street, guns to the head, taking their possessions. And you're asking me about my media credential. God bless you, Greg.
Well, it's so important because, listen, I mean, the First Amendment is there so that people can properly report on just the things that you're talking about and pressing for answers from those who are in charge. But
Yes.
Your ability to do so has been limited severely.
100% yes. And I think that's what they want. And that is exactly what City Hall has kind of tipped their cards, because they said that, believe it or not, Greg, and we're going to be in court this week, okay? Reporter WilliamJKelly.com if you want to donate to my legal defense fund or read the case, because we posted it there in full. The truth has nothing to hide. That's the only thing we have to fight with is, bare hands and asking honest questions, right? So the city of Chicago came back and said in advance of this court date, right, that they will give me my media credential back, but only if I release Mayor Lightfoot, the city of Chicago, all employees, past, present, future, of any wrongdoing. Well, wait a second. That, as a reporter, set off a little alarm bell in my heart and my soul. That what are they hiding? We did, from the word go, say that we wanted Lightfoot's emails. We wanted to know what was her hand in yanking my media credential. How did she, who actually said, get this guy out of here and don't let him come back. And now the fact that is, they first of all haven't been giving us any answers, any emails, anything that you would normally get in a court case, a lawsuit of any merit. And now they're saying, okay, we'll give you that media credential back, but only if you sign a release letting Mayor Lightfoot off the hook, her and her administration, past, present, and future. I'm sorry, Greg. I put that out on Twitter, as you know, to the people who have been following my reporting, which I've continued to do in the city of Chicago at great. No benefit, all risk, no benefit, right? And they're saying no, keep fighting, take it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we'll find out what happens in court on the 30th this week. But I'm prepared to take this all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary. I think that we all see now what happens when our free speech as reporters, as citizens, is trampled by, the first word that came to mind was tyrants, people who don't share it's really sad, Greg. I never would have thought, growing up, going to, school, studying journalism, I was taught that the First Amendment was sacrosanct. Was the single number one article of faith of being a United States citizen, and to see it trampled, not only my own, but I see it everywhere now. Whether you're a reporter, a politician, in some cases, candidates for public office, and simply everyday citizens that are having their freedom of speech rights trampled. It's very disturbing. I'm sorry, Greg. Obviously it's a very sore point with me, especially in light of what's happening in the city. And every single day, I think I have to get out there and I have to ask our mayor because I don't hear him. I don't hear even the questions being asked, much less the answers. Our mayor has severely limited press conferences. When asked a question, he does not give a straight answer. I believe that the people of Chicago deserve a straight answer, Greg.
Well, and I think the idea that your press credentials have been, limited for months
Yes.
on end, while who's going to be held responsible for that? Are there going to be any sanctions? It seems like the deal that they're trying to make is they don't want any sanctions on them, and they'll just kind of hopefully say this all goes away. But we'll keep tabs on what happens there. But William, of course, over the weekend and late last week, story about some woman at a Major League Baseball game in Chicago
Yes.
receiving a gunshot wound. But apparently it was a bullet that fell out of the sky. That's just one story on a stack of stories that we see time and again out of Chicago. Give us the latest of what's going on there.
Greg, I I'm not I'm not just a reporter. I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago. My father was the principal of a Chicago public school that was literally across the street from Sox Park. We're going to call it Sox Park because now it's got like 5 different names and nobody can figure out what's going on over there. But uh, but the fact of the matter is that 2 women were shot on what I believe was billed as, get this, Chicago Public School Teacher Appreciation Night. And they were shot and nobody knew where the shots came from. Obviously, you go through security in order to get into any building in downtown in Chicago nowadays, but certainly a ball game. And as it turns out, they were shot from a gun that was fired a mile away from Sox Park. Now, the only way that they were able to figure out where these shots came from, it's almost, I mean, can you even believe this is what's happening in Chicago, Greg? But the only way that they were able to figure out where these shots came from was because of technology called Shot Spotter. Okay, Shot Spotter technology, where if a gun is fired in Chicago in some proximity to this Shot Spotter technology, they can pinpoint where that gun was fired. Get this: one of Mayor Johnson's campaign promises was that he was going to cancel the Shot Spotter contract because apparently he or his supporters felt that it was racist. How is that racist? I don't know. I've lost the racist thread a long time ago, Greg, so I don't know how identifying where a gun is being fired in the city of Chicago is racist, but there you go.
We also have stories, as you mentioned at the top there, migrant violence. Some of the videos coming out from like Chicago Contrarian and other Twitter handles out of Chicago showing what just seems to be like melees happening in the middle of the streets in broad daylight.
What people don't realize, if you're not from Chicago, and by the way, born and raised, I didn't recognize that street. When I first saw the video, I thought, that's not Chicago. That's Venezuela. That's Caracas. I don't know where that is, but it's not Chicago. Yes, it's Chicago, Greg. And it's not just Chicago. It is literally across the street from the Dirksen Federal Building that I'm going to be at on the 30th. So it's like, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, if this was in a screenplay, you'd say, no. It's too outrageous. It's too ridiculous. Nobody's even going to believe this. They're going to laugh. They're going to think it's a comedy. But they're going to think it's like Omega Man. If you watch that video, and I don't know if you have it, I sent it to you. I don't know if you can like run it right now. It's literally like a scene out of the movie Omega Man. It's insane. This is a migrant shelter. It's called and I've reported from this location, the Standard Club, the former Standard Club of Chicago, which at one time was one of the premier private clubs in Chicago. So the migrants are staying at taxpayer expense to the tune of millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. Who even knows what the actual tab is at this point in time? At the former premier, private. Prior to them turning it into a migrant shelter, I had only been in there once, and that was to interview the author of a book called The Forgotten Man, of all things. Once again, you can't make this stuff up, Greg.
William J. Kelly with us. Finally, I want to get your response to what was released by the mayor's office out of Chicago. City of Chicago files suit against automakers, Kia and Hyundai. The lead to this press release says Mayor Brandon Johnson announced the city has filed a civil lawsuit against Kia America Incorporated, Kia Corporation, Hyundai Motor America, and Hyundai Motor Company for their failure to include industry-standard engine immobilizers in multiple models of their vehicles, resulting in a steep rise in vehicle thefts, reckless driving, property damage, and a wide array of related violent crimes in Chicago. William, just as well as I do, Chicago crime statistics show that there's been a triple-digit increase in the number of vehicle thefts. What's going on here? Is this, a way of diverting the blame from those who are committing crimes to the car manufacturers for not making their vehicles tanks or something? I mean, what's going on here?
Excellent question, Greg. And yes, that is exactly what it is. I was raised to believe that the responsibility lies with the criminal, and in this case, I guess you could almost say the parents of the criminal, because a lot of these car thefts are being committed by minors, teenagers, or younger, not even teenagers, right? There was a carjacking gang that was led by an 11-year-old, if you can believe this, Greg. It is apocalyptic, dystopian, whatever word you want to use. George Orwell wouldn't even believe it if he was here, right? Or he'd be pretty incredulous. He'd be like, "Didn't you read my book? What? I was trying to help you guys out, give you a little heads up about this." But at any rate, the fact of the matter is this: Brandon Johnson, our Mayor Johnson, has not condemned these thefts. He doesn't. There have been 30 armed robberies this weekend alone, where the same people who are stealing these cars jump out of the car with guns drawn, and steal the possessions of people on the street, including a news crew that was just robbed as they were reporting on this story. And yet I have not heard Brandon Johnson condemn the crime itself. The crime. He condemns the car manufacturers. There is a very big disconnect here between what all civilized societies have considered to be right and wrong, and what our current administration considers to be right and wrong here, Greg. And that's why I thank you for keeping the pressure on, asking questions about my media credential. It is the only thing I care about and is getting into the Chicago City Hall press conferences and asking real questions that real Chicagoans deserve to know. I believe that Chicago is a real city, and we deserve to have real questions.
Well, we'll see what happens, and definitely keep posted on that. William J. Kelly, give us all the websites people can follow to make sure they're up to date.
ReporterWilliamJKelly.com, and there is a GoFundMe. It is, by the way, tax deductible if you make a donation to help me get my First Amendment rights restored.
Greatly appreciated, as always. William J. Kelly from Chicago. Be safe out there, all right?
Thank you. God bless you, brother.
It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's news and